How's it going, guys? The NFL annual meeting is still going on with the head coaches now joining the owners, and in turn has pretty much allowed the reporters to interview head coach Matt Lafleur, which lasted about just over a half hour. And it was a pretty decent interview. He revealed some details about the team, and it was nice to listen to him, especially after listening to Mark Murphy and Goody talk and kind of bashing Rodgers, and it started to look like it was making a left turn and airing dirty laundry. They did ask Matt Lafleur a few questions about Rodgers, and Matt Lafleur, being Matt Lafleur, took the high road. He didn't bash Aaron Rodgers in any case. He said he's not going to get into it. He pretty much settled that case right from the start, since the first question was about Aaron Rodgers and the whole situation. He stated he's not getting into that. Rodgers did a lot of good things in his career, and they had a lot of good times, and his only regret is the fact they didn't win a Super Bowl in the past 4 years together. And so after a few questions, with the reporters continually trying to see if they could get something out of Matt Lafleur, they started switching gears and got into more interesting topics about Green Bay Packers and not Aaron Rodgers. And to summarize it, these are pretty much the main tidbits that I took from the interview. First off, they talked about Jordan Love. He had nothing but good praise about him. Pretty much how throughout this 3 years being behind Aaron Rodgers, he's continually improved his development. And the things he looks for is like the timing of his throws, the accuracy, his mechanics, and each year it's improved. And then he mentioned the Eagles game, where you could definitely tell, and we could see it as well as soon as he came in, he just looked more poised in that Eagles game compared to the game against the Chiefs, where he just looked completely out of whack. And from everything we've seen in the very limited showing, he did look like he had a lot more poise. And in these off-season videos we're seeing where he's going out with the receivers and Aaron Jones, he's definitely looking a lot more comfortable and accurate. So it's great to hear that he has been continually improving, and we have seen that show on the field in limited showing. And we're very hopeful. Aaron Rodgers didn't have a good first year. We don't really expect us to have a good first year with Jordan Love. But we want to see if Jordan Love can be that guy, in which Rodgers showed in 2008. He could be that guy despite us losing a lot of games, and we weren't good. Moving on, he talked about the receivers a bit in this interview. Pretty much he stated that they will probably be looking for some veteran leadership in that wide receiver group, as it's a very young group, especially with Samori Toure and Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. There's not much veteran leadership. Alan Lazard's gone. Randall Cobb's going to be gone. Robert Tonyan, who is a tight end, he's gone. So they don't have much veteran leadership. So they'll probably be looking to add something of the sort through free agency, because obviously it won't be through draft. Or maybe if they do a trade, which knowing the Packers, they won't leave any rock unturned to look at all avenues for this. As long as it's not Sammy Watkins again, please. But in turn, also did have a lot of good praise for our young rookie, well now sophomore receivers in Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson, he pretty much said, hey, what we all seen, he's very, very explosive. And you could tell after having a rough first start of the season and having a few drops, once that Cowboys game happened, you started to see Christian Watson. And going forward, going into year 2, he's hoping to see him to run a lot more routes as he understands the route tree a lot more. And probably move him around the offense. They were able to do that last year without any hiccups, which is good. He could play on the outside or the inside, so they probably will move him around a bit more. And as he develops a better route tree, do more than just run straight or slants. Then he started talking about Romeo Doubs, and I'm going to start by saying this. Please take this with a grain of salt, because we all saw it last year, but didn't entirely turn out that well. But he expects him to get back to what we saw at the beginning of the year, where Romeo Doubs looked like an amazing receiver. Like we thought he might have been better than Christian Watson, especially with Watson always hurt. And B, he has those Devontae Adams-like movements. And so I say temper expectations, because a lot of us saw it off the get. Like when the ball was hiked, we saw Devontae Adams and Romeo Doubs with just his movements at the line. So Matt Lafleur called it out. He saw it. He said, please temper expectations. I agree. Let's temper them. But future is very bright. And he's a very great hands-on catcher and can pretty much run any route in the route tree. So that's pretty on par with what we saw and what we heard about Romeo Doubs. It's just getting more consistency, trying to get him back to what he did well at the beginning of the year before he got injured. And the injury could have played a part, once again, if we're going to compare to Davante Adams. Davante Adams' second year when he hurt his ankle and he was pretty much injured throughout the season, he looked bad. So hopefully a fully healthy Romeo Doubs can return back to form and then make that jump from year 1 to year 2 and improve with this offense. Now, moving on to the defense, this is where Matt Lafleur had a lot of questions about and talked into some detail and kind of let us know what's kind of going on in his head of what to expect with his defense come training camp. Now, Matt thought the defense improved throughout the year, especially towards the later half of the year, which we did see. And especially in the Detroit game, even though we lost, we saw a lot of good things from our defense, holding down that offense, which was a high-powered offense towards that time of the season, to limiting them and not being blown out because our offense just stalled all the time. And he took a lot of positives out of that, even though I do frankly remember a lot of 15-yard cushions and 10-yard cushions when it's 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7. Those aggravate me. But besides those, he took a lot of positives from the defense in the later half. And that attributed to the adjustments Joe Barry made. And he thought Joe Barry made a lot of good adjustments towards the tail end of the season. He said he made the defense simpler. And this allowed the players to, run pretty much quicker because they're not thinking so much and execute better. So Joe Barry apparently did make adjustments, which we did see, and it felt like we reverted back to normal form in the Detroit game. But he made the defense simpler, and he saw the defense improve. And that's one of the reasons why it improved in the later half of the year. And adding on to that, he also stated when Eric Stokes got hurt towards the middle of the season, and then Rasul Douglas was pushed towards the outside instead of playing nickel, the defense improved as a whole as well, especially on the secondary side. And pretty much said Rasul Douglas is going to be the day 1 starter on the outside. They're going to push him to the outside because that's his best position. He's a very good boundary corner. And that they expect and are pretty much pushing Keshawn Nixon to be the day 1 nickel guy. Throughout the interview, he's stated they're going to give every chance to Keshawn Nixon to earn the nickel position, that he's going to be the day 1 nickel cornerback. So it's looking like it's going to be Jair, Rasul, and then Keshawn Nixon at nickel. And in keeping with just the defensive back group, he also stated that he expects Darnell Savage to be the day 1 starting safety, which makes sense considering we don't really have many safeties, but he's going to be the day 1 starter at the safety position. Thinks that's his best position. Hopefully he can return to form to when we first got him and not what we've been seeing as of late from Darnell Savage, except for when he kind of earned his job back. But that's not to say that something could derail that, depending on if we draft a safety or if we sign another safety or trade for a safety, which I don't think is going to happen. We're 99% going to draft a safety, especially with our salary cap position. So Darnell Savage is most likely going to be the starting safety. Now, it's interesting because he never mentioned Eric Stokes pretty much at all in this interview. It was mainly Jair, Rasul Douglas, Keshawn Nixon, and Darnell Savage. So I'm not sure where Eric Stokes' position's going to be once he's healthy enough to return to action. Is he going to go back to the outside corner? Rasul comes back over to safety? Because if we're going to go into a microscope on what Matt Lafleur said, he said that Rasul Douglas is going to start at the outside corner, and he doesn't expect him to start at the safety position, at least in the beginning of the season, which makes me think Eric Stokes is still pretty injured and might not be back for the start of training camp. Or they have other plans. That's where the gray area is. What is Eric Stokes' position going to be? Where is he going to play on this defense? Because as of right now, it's a bit crowded still, except for free safety. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, especially once Eric Stokes is officially coming back and where he might play on this defense. Because as of right now, he seems to be the odd man out already. Now, he also did talk about Jair Alexander and how he shadowed receivers from time to time, especially in that Minnesota Viking game where he pretty much shut down Jefferson. He said that's going to be determined on a game-to-game basis. It's obvious that they don't really like doing it, but it's not out of the question, and it's going to depend, I guess, on who the top receiver is in the game. Moving forward, he also talked about the defensive line. In the offseason, we've lost Dean Lowry and Jaron Reed to free agency, and he said that will naturally open up playing time for Devontae Wyatt. And he was asked about, hey, Devontae Wyatt, is he going to get more playing time? Especially since he started coming on late in the season, and he's such a dynamic player, and he was a first-round pick. So he stated, yes, naturally, he's going to earn more playing time, but it's going to depend on his progression from year 1 to year 2. He pretty much said that all players, or most players, make the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2, and hopefully Devontae Wyatt makes that big jump. He knows he's currently training in the offseason, and he's seen a lot of good things. So hopefully he's turning the corner, kind of like with how Rashawn Gary was. It took him a little bit, and he just turned the corner and became the insanity of a player that we have known from Rashawn Gary, especially at the beginning of the season before his ACL injury. So hopefully Devontae Wyatt will make that jump, and he'll get a lot more playing time alongside Kenny Clark and help that man out. Because Kenny Clark is amazing. He needs help, though. And then lastly, a lot of Sean Nixon talk, I know. He was asked, because he's such a dynamic player, are we going to possibly see him on offense? Because some teams like to run their dynamic player on their return on offense because they're so good with the ball in their hands. And he said, maybe, pretty much. Just maybe. He wants him to get down the nickel position first. He is very dead set on him being the nickel guy this year. After that, he also needs to make sure he's very good in the return game and that he's got his pretty much the two positions down, nickel first and then returner, because apparently towards the tail end, especially in the Detroit game, he went rogue and didn't follow the scheme of the return. So he's got to get those two positions down, and if he nails them and then brings on the offensive side and it's not too much for him, then sure, we'll see him on offense, but don't expect it, especially early on. Like, he's got to nail the nickel position first and his return duties before we see anything on offense. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Despite Joe Barry coming back this season, and I have a very big gripe with him, I'm still very optimistic about our defense, especially the way Matt Lafleur talked about it. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, go Pack Go.